There's this moment most people have, usually late at night, where you open your bank account, look at the number staring back at you, and feel this quiet, dull kind of dread. Not panic, not crisis, just dread. Because you're not broke, you're paying your bills, you're surviving, but somewhere in the back of your mind, there's this voice that keeps asking, what happens if something goes wrong? What happens if I lose this job, or my health changes, or 5 years from now I'm still in this exact spot, just with a little more gray in my hair? And the worst part? You've probably told yourself, I'll start doing something when I have more money, when things settle down, when the rent drops, when the raise finally comes through. Here's what I want to talk to you about today. Not some get-rich scheme, not a course, not a hustle. I want to talk about what $100 a month, just 100, can actually do to your life. Not in a magical, hype-driven, this will change everything way, but in a real, grounded, quiet, but powerful way that most people genuinely don't understand. Because the math is one thing, but the psychology behind why we ignore it, that's the more interesting conversation. Let me be honest with you about something first. When most people hear invest $100 a month, they roll their eyes. And I get it, completely. Because we've been fed this narrative our whole lives where financial advice sounds like it was written by someone who has never actually had to choose between fixing their car and paying their electricity bill on time. Just cut your lattes, skip the avocado toast, stop going out. And look, I'm not here to tell you any of that, because the truth is, that kind of advice reduces complex human lives into a spending problem, and money is almost never just a spending problem. It's a context problem, it's a system problem, it's a psychology problem. Think about it. We live in a world that is almost architecturally designed to keep money flowing out of your pocket. Every app on your phone is optimized to make you spend. Every sale email, every limited time offer, every one-click purchase is built by teams of engineers and psychologists whose entire job is to lower your resistance between wanting something and buying it. So when someone tells you just save more, they're treating the symptom, not the disease. They're handing you a bucket while the faucet's still wide open. And then there's the other side of this, the people who do try to do something about it. They download a budgeting app. They track every rupee or dollar for about 3 weeks. And then something happens. A dinner they didn't plan for, a bill they forgot about, and the whole system collapses. And then the story they tell themselves becomes, I'm just not good with money. But here's the thing. You're not bad with money. You're just human, operating inside an environment that wasn't designed with your long-term well-being in mind. And the real crime. Most of us were never taught this stuff. Not in school, not at home, because our parents were navigating the same confusion. We were never given a map, so we've been improvising our entire adult financial lives, feeling vaguely like we should be doing better, without anyone ever actually showing us the terrain. That's what I want to do today. Not give you a 10-step plan, just show you the terrain, help you see the map a little more clearly. And it starts with a number that might feel laughably small, $100, Part 1. Why small numbers feel useless. Here is a psychological phenomenon that researchers call scope insensitivity, and it explains a lot about why we self-sabotage financially without even realizing it. Basically, our brains are terrible at feeling the difference between small numbers that compound over time. We experience $100 right now as a concrete, tangible thing. We can feel what $100 buys: a nice dinner, a pair of shoes, a few streaming services for a month, some extra groceries. It's real, it's present, it's now. But $100 in 30 years, that's abstract. That's a concept. Our brain genuinely struggles to feel it the same way. And because we can't feel it, we discount it. We treat it as less real, less valuable. This is why the math of long-term investing is almost irrelevant if you don't first understand the emotional mismatch at the core of it. So let me try to bridge that gap in a way that actually lands. Imagine two people. Let's call them Priya and Arjun. Priya is 25 years old. She starts putting $100 a month into a broad market index fund. She doesn't pick stocks. She doesn't follow news. She just does it automatically. Every month, like a subscription she set up and forgot about. She earns an average annual return of roughly 8%, which, to be clear, isn't guaranteed, but it's close to what diversified global markets have historically averaged over long stretches of time. She does this for 35 years until she's 60. Arjun is 35. He's been meaning to start. He's been waiting until things felt more stable. He finally starts at 35, same $100 a month, same 8% average return, and he invests for 25 years until he's 60 as well. Both are putting in $100 a month. Both have the same basic strategy. One just started 10 years earlier. By 60, Priya has put in roughly $42,000 of her own money. Arjun has put in about $30,000. The difference in out-of-pocket is $12,000. But here's where it gets strange. Priya ends up with somewhere around $176,000. Arjun ends up with somewhere around $95,000. She contributed $12,000 more, but ended up with $80,000 more. That gap, that $80,000, came from something that costs literally nothing. It came from time. It came from starting a decade earlier. Letting the numbers compound on themselves quietly, in the background, while she was busy living her life. This is compound interest. And I know you've heard that phrase before, but I want you to sit with the emotional reality of that example, not just the math. Because the math alone doesn't change behavior. What changes behavior is when you feel the cost of waiting. The cost of waiting 10 years wasn't $12,000. It was $80,000. And the most painful part? Arjun probably thought during those 10 years he wasn't investing, that it didn't matter, that he'd catch up later, that $100 a month was too small to bother with. That's the psychological trap. The small amount feels like it's not worth starting, but it's precisely because it's compounding that the start matters more than the size. Part 2. What $100 is actually doing. Let me get a little more concrete here, because I think it helps to understand what's actually happening when you invest this money, not just the output of it. When you put $100 into a broad index fund, something that tracks thousands of companies across the world, you're not betting on one company. You're not gambling on one founder making the right decision. You're essentially buying a tiny slice of the global economy. Every month, that slice gets a little bigger. And every time those companies produce value through products, through innovation, through the billions of daily transactions that happen across the world, a little bit of that value flows back to you, quietly, without you doing anything. Now the market goes up and down. Some years it drops sharply. 2008, 2020, there will be more years like that. That's not a bug in the system. It's a feature. Because when the market drops and you're still putting in your $100, you're buying more shares at a lower price. And when the market recovers, as it has, historically, every single time, those cheaper shares appreciate more. This is called dollar cost averaging, and it's one of the most powerful things a regular non-wealthy person can do, not because it's sophisticated, because it's consistent. Consistency is the secret ingredient that no one talks about enough because it's not exciting. You can't put "I was consistent" on a highlight reel, but consistency is what separates the people who look back at 60 and feel financially secure from the people who look back and wonder where the time went. Part 3. The emergency layer, before you even invest. Now, I want to be honest about something here because I think there's a conversation that comes before investing that most people skip over. If you're living paycheck to paycheck and you don't have any cushion, putting money into an investment account is not the first move. The first move, and this is genuinely the most important financial foundation anyone can build, is an emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of essential expenses sitting in a savings account. Just there. Not invested, not growing at 8%, just sitting there being boring and safe. Because here's what happens without it. Life happens. A medical bill, a car repair, a month where work dries up. And when those things happen without a cushion, people go into debt, credit card debt that carries 20 to 30% annual interest. And once you're in that cycle, you're not building wealth. You're just running on a treadmill, paying interest on interest, watching your financial life slowly drain. The emergency fund breaks that cycle before it starts. So before the $100 a month in investments, If you don't have this cushion, even $50 a month going into a dedicated savings account for emergencies is the most important financial decision you can make. Not the most exciting, not the one that makes for a viral YouTube video, but the most important, because investing only works when you don't have to pull the money out at the worst possible time. Part 4. The psychology of automation. Here's something fascinating that behavioral economists discovered, and it completely reshapes how we think about saving. When people decide actively every month whether to save, most of them don't, not because they don't care, because life intervenes, because the decision fatigue of adulting is real, because at the end of a long week, the path of least resistance is spending, not saving. But when saving is automatic, when it happens before you see the money, something different occurs. People adjust, they adapt. They find a way to live on what's left, and they stop missing what was moved before they touched it. This is called paying yourself first, and it's one of those phrases that sounds like a motivational poster, but is actually grounded in legitimate psychological research. The key insight is this: willpower is not a reliable financial strategy systems are. When you automate a transfer of $100 on the day your paycheck lands, you've removed willpower from the equation entirely. The decision has already been made. There's nothing to resist. The money is gone before your brain has a chance to want something else. This is why people who build wealth aren't necessarily more disciplined than people who don't. They've just set up systems that make discipline unnecessary. And once that system is running, once you've sat with it for 3 or 4 months and realized you genuinely don't miss it the way you thought you would, something changes psychologically. You start to feel capable, not rich, just capable, like you're doing something, like there's a small, quiet engine running in the background of your life, building something for a future version of you. That feeling is underrated. In a world where financial anxiety is epidemic, and it is, genuinely, that quiet feeling of doing something matters enormously for your mental health, not just your net worth. Part 5. What about inflation? What about fees? Okay, let me address a couple of real things, because I don't want this to sound like I'm painting an unrealistically rosy picture. Inflation is real. Over time, $100 today will buy less than $100 a decade from now. This is one of the reasons keeping money in a regular savings account long-term is a losing strategy in real terms, because most savings accounts don't keep up with inflation. Your balance might be growing, but your purchasing power is quietly shrinking. This is actually one of the reasons investing in equities in ownership of companies has historically outpaced inflation. Because companies can raise prices. Companies can innovate. The value they produce tends to grow alongside or faster than the cost of living. Now, fees. This is something people genuinely underestimate. If you're investing through a fund that charges high management fees, even something that sounds small, like 1% a year, that compounds too, just in the wrong direction. Over 30 years, the difference between a fund that charges 0.05% and one that charges 1% can amount to tens of thousands of dollars out of your pocket. This is one of the reasons low-cost index funds have become the go-to recommendation for regular investors. Not because they're the most exciting option, because they're the most efficient. You're not paying someone to beat the market. Research consistently shows most actively managed funds don't beat their benchmark over long periods anyway. You're just buying the market at the lowest possible cost and letting time do the work. Part 6. The comparison trap. There's one more thing I want to talk about in this section, and it's something that probably affects you more than you realize, especially if you spend time on social media. Comparison. We are wired, at a species level, to benchmark ourselves against others. For most of human history, that was useful. You compared yourself to your immediate community, your village, your tribe. The comparison set was small and local. Now the comparison set is global and curated. You're not comparing yourself to your neighbor. You're comparing yourself to the most financially successful version of everyone you've ever met, filtered through the lens of social media, where people post their wins and hide their debt. And what this does psychologically is devastating. It creates this ambient sense that everyone else is doing better than you, that you're behind, that $100 a month is embarrassingly small compared to what others are doing. But here's what's actually true. Most people are improvising their financial lives. Most people have more anxiety about money than they let on. Most people haven't started either. You starting something, even small, puts you ahead of where most people will be, not because of your income, but because of your intention. I want to tell you something that shifted the way I think about all of this. Most conversations about money are framed around wealth, around getting rich, around the number in your account becoming bigger. And there's nothing wrong with wanting that. But I think that framing misses something deeper. The thing that money is actually for money at its core is about options. It's about not being trapped. When you have no savings, no buffer, no cushion, you're not just financially vulnerable. You're psychologically trapped. You can't say no to a job that's making you miserable because you need the paycheck. You can't take a month off when your mental health is crumbling. You can't help a family member who needs you. You can't take a risk on something you actually care about. Money doesn't buy happiness. But the absence of any financial safety net is one of the most consistent predictors of chronic stress, anxiety, and a kind of quiet desperation that erodes your quality of life over years without you even fully noticing it's happening. What $100 a month builds slowly, quietly, over years isn't wealth in some abstract, distant sense. It's options. It's the ability to make a choice 6 years from now that today you literally couldn't afford to make. It's the difference between staying in a situation because you have to and staying because you genuinely want to. That shift from trapped to choosing is one of the most profound things that happens as financial security grows. And it doesn't require being rich. It requires being intentional for long enough, consistently enough, that the numbers start to matter. There's a concept in psychology called the locus of control. People with an internal locus of control feel like they have agency over their lives, that their choices shape their future. People with an external locus feel like things happen to them, like they're passengers. Financial insecurity pushes people toward the external because when you're one unexpected bill away from crisis, you're not making proactive choices. You're reacting. You're surviving. Building even a modest financial buffer pulls you back toward the internal. You start to feel like a driver again, and that shift in feeling changes everything. How you show up at work, how you treat people, how you think about the future, how much hope you carry around on a daily basis. That's what $100 a month is actually building, not just money agency. Okay, let's get real about how this actually works in practice. Because I want to leave you with something you can genuinely act on, not just think about. The first thing before anything else is to figure out where you actually stand. Not in a scary, obsessive way. Just open a notebook or a notes app and write down 3 numbers. What comes in each month, what goes out in fixed costs, and roughly what's left. Most people have never done this clearly. They operate on a vague sense of their finances, which means they don't actually know whether $100 a month is genuinely impossible or just uncomfortable. Those are very different things, and only you can figure out which one it is. For some people, $100 genuinely isn't available right now, and that's okay. Start with 25, start with 50. The exact number matters less than the habit. The habit is the thing. The second thing is to give it a specific home, not a general savings account that you dip into whenever something comes up. A dedicated account, ideally separate from your everyday banking, so it's slightly inconvenient to touch, so it has psychological distance from your spending money. There's research showing that even small physical and psychological barriers to spending dramatically reduce impulsive withdrawal. You don't need to lock the money away forever. You just need it to feel like a commitment rather than a parking spot. The third thing, and this is the one that changes everything, is to automate it. Set up the transfer to happen on the day your money arrives, before you see it. Before you spend it on something you'll forget about in 3 days. Automation removes the decision entirely. And removing the decision is what makes the habit stick. If you're wondering where to actually put it, a broad, low-cost index fund through whatever brokerage or retirement account is available in your country is a solid starting point. If your employer offers any kind of matched retirement contribution and you're not taking advantage of it, that is genuinely free money that you're leaving on the table, and it should be your first priority before anything else. The fourth thing is to stop checking it constantly. This one's harder than it sounds because we're wired to want feedback. But the market will go up and down, and if you're checking your portfolio every week, you're going to feel things that lead to bad decisions. You'll panic sell when things drop. You'll feel overconfident when things spike. The people who do best with long-term investing are the ones who set it up and then largely forget about it, review it once or twice a year, rebalance if needed, otherwise let time do the work. The fifth thing, and this is more of a mindset thing than a practical step, is to stop waiting for the right amount. There's a version of you that's been saying, "I'll start when I have more," but more never arrives in the way we imagine it will. The raise comes and the lifestyle adjusts. The bonus appears and there's something that needs paying. The expenses have a way of expanding to meet whatever's coming in. The habit has to come first. The habit creates the surplus, in a way, not because you're magically earning more, but because you've trained yourself to live on a little less. And the compound effect of that habit over years is staggering. The sixth thing is to think about this in decades, not months. This is hard. Our brains are genuinely not built for this. We discount the future naturally. But try this exercise. Picture yourself at 60 or 65, looking back at this specific period of your life. What would you want that person to be grateful for? What decisions made quietly and consistently right now would give that future version of you the most relief? The answer almost always involves starting earlier than you think you need to. A note on debt. I need to add this because it matters. If you have high-interest debt, credit cards, certain personal loans, anything above 10 to 12% interest, paying that down aggressively almost always beats investing first because you're not going to reliably earn 20% in the market, but you're guaranteed to lose 20% to credit card interest every year you carry that balance. So the hierarchy, roughly speaking, emergency fund first, high-interest debt second, then investing. This isn't about being rigid. It's about being strategic with where every dollar does the most work. And if you're carrying significant debt, I want to say this gently, you're not in that position because you're irresponsible. Debt is a system. Interest is a system. And once you're inside it, it can feel like gravity, like it's just the nature of your life. But it's not permanent. It's a phase. And every extra dollar you throw at it shortens that phase, sometimes dramatically, the social pressure problem. One more practical reality that almost no one talks about honestly. It's genuinely hard to save money when your social world involves spending. When your friends go out for dinner every weekend. When there's pressure to keep up with holidays, gifts, appearances. When the cost of belonging to your social circles is higher than your savings goal. This is real. This is not a character flaw. This is a human need. Belonging, connection, being part of something, running up against a financial need. The answer isn't to isolate yourself and live like a monk. But it might mean having some honest conversations with yourself first about which spending actually brings you joy and which of it is pure social performance. And maybe eventually with people close to you, because you'd be surprised how many of them are feeling the same quiet financial anxiety and would be relieved to talk about it. I want to end with something that isn't a call to action and isn't a summary. I just want to sit here for a moment and say something real. Financial anxiety is one of the most quietly isolating experiences of modern life. It doesn't look like a crisis from the outside. You're not falling apart. You're showing up to work. You're paying your bills. You're keeping things together. But somewhere inside, there's this low hum of worry that never fully goes away. This sense that you're behind, that others have figured something out that you haven't, that you're one unexpected event away from things getting very difficult. And what I hope you take from this, more than any number or any strategy, is this. That feeling is not a reflection of your worth. It's not a sign that you're bad with money or that you lack discipline. It's a sign that you're navigating a complicated world without a map, and that the map would have helped. You're not behind because you're not trying. You're behind, if at all, because the system is genuinely hard to navigate and because the things that actually matter, time, consistency, starting before you feel ready, are invisible and unexciting in a world that screams at you to buy things, compare yourself to others, and wait until conditions are perfect. Conditions are never perfect. $100 a month or 50 or 25 started imperfectly today in an account that's slightly awkward to access, set up on an automatic transfer you mostly forget about, does more than almost any other financial decision you could make right now, not because of the number, because of what it represents. A small, deliberate, quiet signal to yourself and to time that you're showing up, that you believe in your own future enough to put a tiny piece of your present toward it. That's not nothing. That's actually everything. Progress is not a straight line. You'll miss months. Life will intervene. You'll dip into it once and feel guilty about it. None of that means you failed. None of that means you start over. You just come back. You restart the transfer. You keep going. Because the version of you that exists in 20 years, the one that either feels financially secure or doesn't, the one that has options or doesn't, the one that can make choices freely or can't, that version of you is being quietly shaped right now by decisions that feel too small to matter. They matter. You matter. Start where you are with what you have. That's enough.